Hi, everybody. I want to thank you for joining me on this Monday of Holy Week. And this series this week is about what was happening in Jerusalem on that particular day. This would be the Monday after Palm Sunday. And on that Monday in Jerusalem, the city is fully charged with the buzz about Jesus entering on a colt. Now, the scriptures say in Matthew 21 that the entire city of Jerusalem, everybody, was in an uproar as he entered. Who is this, they asked. And in verse 11, it says, and the crowds replied, it's Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. And on Monday morning, Jesus and the 12, they leave Bethany and return to Jerusalem. And along the way, Jesus curses the fig tree. More about that in a minute. Imagine, though, what would the social media equivalent of that day being all Twitter-pated about this rabbi from Galilee riding in and being hailed in such a magnificent fashion. And yet, the talk was as divided as a political rally filled with donkeys and elephants. The Jewish leaders fearing that their way of life was at stake, and the followers of Jesus reckoning at best, maybe the best they could, that the Messiah had finally arrived in their lifetime and on their life stage. The whole city was shaken by his entry. The population of Jerusalem, if you just wonder, was probably around 40,000, but about another 150,000 pilgrims had made their way, where now we have almost 200,000 in a city used to 40,000. And what an auspicious time for the presentation of the Messiah. But when the city officials asked who this person was riding into Jerusalem with such acclamation, the crowd didn't answer son of David, but modestly said, well, the prophet from Nazareth of Galilee. What a week it was about to be. You know, Monday it's never anybody's favorite day. And things get off to a really weird start as Jesus and his disciples approach this fig tree in Matthew 21, starting in verse 18. In the morning, as Jesus was returning to Jerusalem, he was hungry. And he noticed a fig tree beside the road, and he went over to see if there were any figs, but there were only leaves. And then Jesus looks at this fig tree and says, may you never bear fruit again. And immediately the fig tree withers up. I mean, the disciples totally freaked out. And they saw this and said, how did this fig tree wither so quickly? And Jesus told them, I tell you the truth, if you have faith and don't doubt, you can do things like this and much more. You can even say to the mountain, may you be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and it will happen. And then in verse 21, Jesus told them, I tell you the truth, if you have faith and don't doubt, you can do things like this and much more. You can even say to this mountain, may you be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and it will happen. You can pray for anything, he said, and if you have faith, you will receive it. Now don't miss the nuance in Jesus' command. Instant response from nature. And the disciples are still being amazed at his continuous power after all this time. And then the real teaching with faith, you can do all things as well. What a message to a world in turmoil, both then and today. And so Jesus now enters into Jerusalem on this Monday and he clears the temple. Later in verse 21, it says, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out all the people buying and selling animals for sacrifice. And he knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves. And he said to them, the scriptures decree my temple will be called a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a den of thieves, but you make it a den of robbers. Listen, Jesus isn't condemning the money, but the heart. As always, Jesus directly deals and gets on the radar with these Pharisees, and he still is. To play like you love Jesus and lord it over others in Jesus' model, well, that's just living sinfully, period. I mean, and in the evening, Jesus and the 12 have Jerusalem all up in a roar. They leave Jerusalem and head back to Bethany. And on the way, it says, the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. The leading priests and the teachers of religious law saw these wonderful miracles and heard even of the children praising him in the temple, shouting, praise God for the Son of David. But the leaders, they were indignant. They asked Jesus, do you hear what these children are saying? Yes, Jesus replied. Haven't you ever read the scriptures? For they say, you have taught children and infants to give you praise. And then he returned to Bethany, where he stayed overnight with his friends. So to recap, if you were there on Monday in Jerusalem, along the way, to the town, Jesus curses the fig tree with dominion over nature. Then he has to deal with evil in the house of God, dealing with people's heart, the spiritually dead religious leaders of Israel. But the symbolism most likely extended to all believers, demonstrating that genuine faith is more than just outward religiosity. True living faith has to bear spiritual fruit in a believer's life. And then when Jesus arrives at the temple, he found the courts full of corrupt money changers. And he began overturning their tables and clearing the temple. And this is what he said: the scriptures declare my temple will be a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. I mean, Jesus is specific here. So on Monday evening, Jesus stays back in Bethany with his friends, probably with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And I can only imagine how they talk through the events of the day on Monday night, starting with walking with the disciples, cursing a fig tree, watching his dominion over all of nature, then leaving and going to his house and seeing how things just weren't right, and he has to turn it all upside down. And then, shortly after that, what do we see? We see Jesus not just dealing with nature, not just dealing with the church, but dealing with people, because he's all about people. And on that Monday, when the city is starting to catch fire with rival sides, scared to death about what was going on, with an energy that was just overwhelming in the city, Jesus stops and heals people, specifically children and little boys and girls, without all the foolishness of adulthood. Start singing, blessings to God, for the Son of David has arrived. Oh, my friend, it must have been overwhelming that Monday. But today, on this Monday, you can find the peace that he offered those children. And you don't have to be like the spiritual leaders and question Jesus. You can trust as those children did. So as we prepare for the balance of this Holy Week, on this Monday, recognize Jesus rode in yesterday. He cleaned out the temple today, but he always came back to serving people, and then he went to rest. I trust you have a great night tonight, and I'll see you back tomorrow night for what's happening in Jerusalem, if you were there on Tuesday. God bless you. Go in peace.